To whatever backwoods, old-timey hillbilly decided it was a good idea to put a window inside my shower, what the hell is wrong with you? Also, why? Also, I hate you. You know that naked, vulnerable feeling you get when you're looking outside a window at night into the wilderness? That sensation that at any moment you'll see something beyond the tree line looking back at you. Just imagine how much worse that feels when you're literally naked and vulnerable. You may be wondering, why don't I just remove the window? The answer is that I'm not much of a handyman, and I'm pretty bad with home improvement. I'm much better at complaining about things, so I stick to what I'm good at. After a few tried and failed solutions to my problem, I did find something well within my capabilities, though. I applied a stained glass window sticker, giving me all the natural light and none of the "somebody could peep in on me naked" of the plain glass window. I felt like a goddamn Disney princess while showering in that rainbow array of light shafts. Still, there were a few pieces of my stained glass that were clear, and sometimes at night I couldn't resist peeking through as if looking for something. My imagination would run wild, but when my search turned up empty of anything but tree and shadow for the millionth time, I returned to my glorious, fear-free shower. On a side note, I also got a new fancy shower head to feel even better, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. I just wanted to brag. You've probably realized this wouldn't be much of a story if it were all about how awesome my showers were these days, and you're wrong. Me bragging about how great my life is will always be a good story. But in this case, there is more, so you're at least a little bit right. It started with little things. I would notice my motion-sensitive light on the back of the house trigger randomly throughout the night. My shower window faced the same way, so I'd watch the lights flicker on and off through my stained glass with an expression best described as grumpy curmudgeon. Sometimes I'd do my ritual of peeking out when the lights came on, but as always, there was nothing I could see. Then the noises started. Anybody who has lived in the countryside can tell you that weird noises are just a part of life, especially at night. You just learn to tune them all out, because 10 times out of 10, it's just some dumb animal howling or braying or scrabbling at something. Have you ever heard a fox's scream? Google it. That stuff can freak you out in the middle of the night until you learn to ignore it. That's why I didn't care much when I started hearing scratching on my house at night. That kind of thing just happens. I think I have squirrels inside my walls, man. I remember telling my friend Ray one day, sharing a few beers out on the porch. I think you have squirrels inside your brain, he teased back. Honestly, I still have no idea what that meant, but that's Ray for you. I just shrugged and cracked open another drink. Even though I didn't quite get it, as time went on, I kind of wondered if he was right. Maybe there was something wrong with my brain. The scratching just kept getting louder and more frequent with time. But when I peeked outside, I never saw anything. The sound almost felt like it had an intent behind it that grew more hostile and insistent each night. "Let me in," it said in some way only I could understand. It got on my nerves, and after a while of this, I began to feel more naked and vulnerable than I had showering in front of that plain glass window. When Ray saw what a mess I was, he agreed to stay for a night and help me put the maybe squirrel issue to rest, one way or the other. We spent the entire night awake, half vigilant for the scratching, half on a binge of bad television to laugh at. But it never came. I couldn't believe it. Whatever dumb animal decided to scratch up my walls must have a mean sense of humor, because now I looked crazy in front of my friend. When morning came, he threw out his brain squirrel's comment again, with a wink, and went home to sleep, leaving me alone. And just like clockwork, the scratching started again the next night, louder than ever. Much louder than a squirrel could be. If I wasn't crazy before, I sure as hell was after this went on for weeks. I grew paranoid, and I found it difficult to sleep. I started drinking until I passed out because it was the only way I could get any rest. I even stopped going into work, spending all my time in my house, pressing my ears to the walls or peering out the windows anxiously. At some point, it became a deafening sound that even strong spirits could no longer dilute. and I felt my mind unraveling and reforming in this oncoming madness. It was overwhelming, and in a desperate and unthinking bid for relief, I decided to give as good as I got. Disconnected from my own reality, I watched myself from a distance as I grabbed a fork and scratched at the walls as loudly and insistently as I could for an entire night. I howled at the top of my lungs until my throat went hoarse, tearing through paint and drywall and whatever else my furious forking came across until the sun rose and I collapsed from exhaustion. When I came back to myself, I couldn't believe what I had done. I know I should probably have been worried about my mental health, but all I could think of is how I had totally wrecked the property value of this house and had no way to pay for all this damage. My daylight hours were filled with regret, but when the sun set, I knew I had done the right thing. The noise had stopped. Whatever had driven me mad was finally gone. It was a relief. I slept well that night, for the first time in weeks. My house was a mess, but my mind was finally getting the peace I deserved. When you can't sleep, your head gets a noisy static that drowns out everything else, and when that static goes away, the quiet feels more powerful than it ever had before. Somehow the world feels even more right, even though it's the same as before. That next night, I felt good enough to take a shower, something I hadn't done in a while due to, going crazy. I was relaxed, letting all the struggles wash off me, when I caught my motion sensor light flickering on and off again. Then, that sound that put a pit inside of my stomach. A very faint scratching. I may be a coward, but this time I knew I couldn't. I just couldn't live with one more day of that sound, faint or no. It was time to put an end to this. I rushed out of the shower without even turning it off, threw on the first clothes I could find, and ran out the back door with a baseball bat in hand. I saw nothing. That was the worst part of it all, always seeing nothing. The scratching had stopped completely the minute I opened the door. I searched all around the yard in a frenzy, bat in hand, ready to stop it all. You know that feeling I talked about at the start of this? That sensation that you may be watched? That anxiety that puts the hairs on your neck on end and turns your stomach something awful? It was so strong out there, like a physical thing you could touch. I thought I could vomit right there in the grass. Something was wrong. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. I took a steady breath and turned to go back inside, where at least I knew I was safe. And from the corner of my eye, in the bathroom window, through the clear bit of my fake stained glass, I catch something that doesn't seem right. A familiar eye, just like my own, peeking outside at the tree line.